Altair's tentacles trembled as she stared at the encrypted human broadcast, her four eyes widening in disbelief. "By the celestial spheres, human males have a third leg," she exclaimed, her voice echoing through the research vessel, Celestial Seeker, as it approached Earth for first contact. The young Ulian xenobiologist had stumbled upon what she believed to be a groundbreaking discovery about human anatomy. In reality, she had intercepted an adult entertainment transmission, misinterpreting the images in her excitement and inexperience. Convinced of her findings, Altair immediately shared her discovery with the Ulian High Council. The Council's reaction was swift and alarming. The prospect of encountering a physically superior species sent waves of panic through the assembled members. Within hours, they voted to cancel the diplomatic mission and begin preparations for potential conflict. Altair watched in horror as her mistake spiraled into a crisis that threatened peaceful relations between their species. Determined to correct her error and prevent an unnecessary war, Altair leveraged her family's political influence. She arranged a covert fact-finding mission to Earth, driven by a mixture of scientific curiosity and a desperate need to undo the damage she had caused. As her personal shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, Altair's heart raced with anticipation and fear. She guided the craft to a remote area in Montana, USA, hoping to avoid detection and gather first-hand information about human physiology. The Montana landscape sprawled beneath her, a patchwork of rugged terrain and verdant pastures. Altair's shuttle touched down in a secluded meadow, surrounded by towering pines and distant mountains. As she emerged from her craft, the alien xenobiologist took her first breath of Earth air, her respiratory sacs expanding with the unfamiliar mixture of gases. Nearby, Robert Richardson, a rugged human male rancher, was repairing fences on his property. The sound of Altair's shuttle had been masked by the whine of his electric fence tester, leaving him unaware of the extraterrestrial visitor in his vicinity. Altair's first glimpse of a real human sent shockwaves through her system. Robert stood on two legs, not three, his muscular form moving with a grace that defied her expectations. The realization of her monumental error hit her like a gravitational wave. Robert turned, sensing movement in his peripheral vision. His eyes locked onto Altair's alien form, her blue-tinged skin, four arms, and writhing tentacles. He reacted defensively, dropping his tools and reaching for the rifle slung across his back. The tension between them was palpable, a mixture of fear, fascination, and misunderstanding. Altair raised her four hands in a gesture of peace, her tentacles curling nervously around her lower body. Unbeknownst to the pair, their encounter had set larger forces in motion. In the depths of space, Ulian military vessels began to mobilize, preparing for a preemptive strike against the perceived triple-legged threat. On Earth, the United Nations Extraterrestrial Contact Committee detected Altair's unauthorized landing, dispatching a team to investigate the potential alien incursion. As Altair and Robert faced each other in the Montana wilderness, the fate of both their species hung in the balance. The alien xenobiologist grappled with her growing attraction to the human male, even as she recognized the urgent need to prevent an interspecies war. Robert, his initial xenophobia warring with an unexpected curiosity, found himself drawn to Altair's exotic features. With time running out and global tensions rising, Altair knew she had to find a way to communicate with Robert, correct her misunderstanding, and somehow avert the looming conflict. The challenge before her seemed insurmountable, but the alternative, a war based on her mistake, was unthinkable. As the Montana sun dipped towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, Altair took a tentative step towards Robert. The future of human-Ulian relations now rested on this unlikely pair, a curious alien girl and a rugged human rancher, and their ability to bridge the vast gulf of misunderstanding between their worlds. As the Montana sun dipped below the horizon, Robert lowered his rifle, his weathered face a mixture of caution and curiosity. Altair's alien form trembled slightly, her tentacles coiling tighter around her lower body as she maintained her gesture of peace. What are you?" Robert's gruff voice broke the tense silence. Altair's translator implant processed his words, and she responded in slightly accented English. "I am Altair, a xenobiologist from the planet Ulia. I come in peace, seeking to understand your species. Robert's eyebrows furrowed, his grip on the rifle loosening slightly. Xenobiologist? You mean you study aliens? Well, I reckon I'm the alien to you, ain't I? Altair's four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of agreement in Ullian culture. Yes, you are correct. I made a grave error in my research, and now I must correct it before it leads to dire consequences. The rancher's expression softened slightly, recognizing the distress in Altair's voice. He glanced around, aware of the growing darkness and the potential danger of leaving an alien visitor exposed in the open. Look, he said, lowering his rifle completely. I don't know what's going on here, but you can't stay out in the open. There's an old barn over yonder. You can hole up there while we figure this out. Altair's tentacles relaxed slightly, her gratitude evident in her posture. Thank you. Your kindness is appreciated. As they walked towards the barn, Robert kept a wary eye on his extraterrestrial guest. The structure loomed before them, weathered wood silvered by years of Montana sun and snow. Robert pushed open the creaking door, revealing a musty interior filled with old farm equipment and bales of hay. It ain't much, but it'll keep you out of sight, he said, gesturing inside. Altair entered, her four eyes taking in every detail of the earthly construction. This will suffice. I am in your debt, Robert. Over the next few days, a tentative routine emerged. Robert went about his ranch work, hyper-aware of his hidden guest. Altair, for her part, observed the human's daily activities with fascination. On the third morning, as Robert repaired a section of fence, Altair emerged from the barn, her curiosity overcoming her caution. She watched as Robert's muscles strained against a stubborn post, his two legs firmly planted in the earth. Your physical capabilities are remarkable, Altair noted, her tentacles gesturing towards Robert's arms. Robert paused, wiping sweat from his brow. Just doing what needs doing, though I reckon you folks might have easier ways of getting things done. Altair moved closer, her four eyes focusing on the fence mechanism. Perhaps I can assist. Our technology might offer a solution. Over the next hour, Altair explained principles of material stress and load distribution that left Robert's head spinning. But as they applied her knowledge to the fence repair, he found himself impressed by the alien's practical insights. As days passed, their interactions grew more frequent and relaxed. Robert taught Altair about Earth's varied ecosystems, explaining the delicate balance of predator and prey on his ranch. In turn, Altair shared knowledge of advanced irrigation techniques that could revolutionize Robert's water management. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Robert turned to Altair. You mentioned a mistake when you first arrived. What did you mean by that? Altair's skin flushed a deeper blue, her tentacles curling in embarrassment. I misinterpreted some human transmissions. I believed your species possessed 3 legs, making you far superior physically. This misinformation has led my people to fear yours. Robert's laugh echoed across the ranch. 3 legs? Well, I've been called many things, but never a tripod. His amusement faded as he processed the implications. Wait, your people fear us because of this? Altair nodded solemnly. Yes, and I fear they may take drastic action based on this misunderstanding. I must contact them, but my attempts have been blocked. Unbeknownst to the unlikely pair, their time was running short. Agent Marcus Steele of the United Nations Extraterrestrial Contact Committee had arrived in the area, his piercing stare and no-nonsense demeanor setting the local population on edge. Steele sat in the town's only diner, his crisp suit a stark contrast to the casual attire of the locals. He sipped black coffee, his keen eyes observing every patron. Seen anything unusual lately? He asked the waitress as she refilled his cup. She shrugged. Nothing too out of the ordinary, though old man Jenkins swears he saw lights in the sky over Richardson's ranch last week. Steele's eyebrow arched. Richardson's ranch? Tell me more about this Richardson. As Steele gathered information, Robert and Altair continued their cultural exchange, unaware of the approaching investigation. Their growing bond was tested one afternoon when the sound of an approaching vehicle sent Altair scrambling for the barn. Robert walked out to meet the dust-covered government SUV pulling up to his house. Agent Steele stepped out, his demeanor all business. "Mr. Richardson, I'm Agent Steele with the UN. We've had reports of unusual activity in the area. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Robert's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. "Not at all, Agent. What can I help you with?" As Robert fielded Steele's probing questions, Altair huddled in the barn, her heart's pounding. She knew she needed to contact her people to prevent the looming conflict. Her eyes fell on her shuttle's advanced communications array. It might be powerful enough to break through the jamming, but using it risked exposing her position to both human and Ulian authorities. Altair's tentacles twisted in agitation as she weighed her options. The fate of two species hung in the balance, but so did her growing connection with Robert. As Agent Steele's voice drifted from the house, Altair realized time was running out. She had to make a decision, and soon. In the vastness of space, Admiral Zorn stood on the bridge of the Ulian flagship, his tentacles rigid with anticipation. Earth grew larger on the interface, a blue marble that held both promise and threat. "Prepare the first strike package," Zorn commanded, his voice cold. "We'll neutralize their defenses before they know what hit them." As the Ulian fleet armed its weapons, the Montana sky darkened with gathering storm clouds. On a small ranch, an alien scientist and a human rancher stood at the crossroads of history, their actions in the coming hours poised to shape the future of interstellar relations. Thunder rumbled overhead as Robert and Altair exchanged a worried glance. "That Agent Steele, he's not going to give up easily," Robert muttered, his weathered hands clenching into fists. "We can't stay here, Altair. It's not safe for either of us." Altair's tentacles writhed anxiously. "You are correct, but where can we go? My shuttle is too conspicuous to use." Robert's eyes gleamed with drive. "I know these mountains like the back of my hand. There are places up there where even the most persistent government types won't find us." Without wasting another moment, they sprang into action. Robert grabbed his old hiking backpack, stuffing it with essentials, water, dried food, a first aid kit, and warm clothing. Altair gathered her crucial scientific equipment and communication devices. As they slipped out of the barn, the sound of approaching vehicles echoed in the distance. Robert led Altair towards the tree line, his steps sure and swift despite the uneven terrain. The alien xenobiologist struggled to keep pace, her forelegs adapting to the rocky ground. They plunged into the dense forest, the canopy above providing cover from prying eyes. Robert's knowledge of the land proved invaluable as he guided them through hidden game trails and natural passes. Altair marveled at his ability to navigate the wilderness, her scientific mind cataloging every detail of their journey. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thin and cold. Altair's respiratory sacs worked overtime to process the decreased oxygen levels. Robert noticed her labored breathing and called for a brief rest. "How you holding up?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Altair's skin flushed a deeper blue. "My physiology is adapting. It is fascinating to experience these environmental changes firsthand." Robert couldn't help but chuckle. Leave it to a scientist to get excited about being out of breath. Their moment of levity was short-lived. A distant humming sound caught their attention, growing louder by the second. Robert's eyes widened as he spotted a sleek metallic craft descending through the clouds. "That ain't no Earth vehicle," he whispered. Altair's four eyes focused on the ship, her tentacles coiling tightly. "It's Ulian, a scout ship, but why would they send one here?" They watched in stunned silence as the craft, its cloaking technology malfunctioning, spiraled out of control. It crashed into a nearby ridge, the sound of twisting metal echoing through the mountains. "We should investigate," Altair said, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. Robert nodded grimly. "Might be our only chance to contact your people and stop this mess." They made their way towards the crash site, the journey taking them through treacherous scree slopes and narrow ledges. Robert's sure-footed guidance kept them from disaster more than once. As they approached the wreckage, a figure stumbled out of the ship. Lieutenant Krell, disoriented and injured, raised a weapon at the sight of Robert. "Stay back, triple-legged monster!" Krell shouted, his tentacles trembling. Robert froze, hands raised. Whoa there, partner. I ain't got 3 legs, and I sure as heck ain't a monster. Altair stepped forward, her hands also raised in a gesture of peace. Lieutenant Krell, please listen. There has been a grave misunderstanding. Humans do not possess 3 legs. Our initial research was flawed. Krell's eyes darted between Robert and Altair, confusion evident in his alien features. But the reports, the invasion plans, all based on a mistake, Altair explained. One I am responsible for and must correct. As the tension slowly dissipated, Robert's keen eyes spotted movement in the valley below. We've got company coming. Looks like Agent Steele found our trail. Krell lowered his weapon, reality setting in. My ship's communication array is damaged. We cannot contact the fleet. Altair's tentacles twisted in thought. Perhaps we can combine our technologies. Robert, is there anywhere nearby we could set up a temporary base? Robert's face lit up. The old mining town? It's not far and it's got plenty of cover. They worked quickly, salvaging what they could from Krell's ship before making their way to the abandoned town. The dilapidated buildings loomed before them, a ghost of the Old West nestled in the Montana wilderness. Inside a crumbling assay office, Robert and Altair set to work. The humans' practical knowledge of Earth technology meshed surprisingly well with Altair and Krell's advanced understanding. They cobbled together a communication device using parts from the mining equipment and Ullian technology. As Altair attempted to establish a connection with the Ullian High Council, Robert kept watch. He could hear the distant sound of vehicles approaching. We've got incoming, he warned. Agent Steele's persistent. I'll give him that. Krell joined Robert at the window, his alien eyes widening at the sight of the human vehicles. Your transportation technology is primitive yet effective. Robert grinned. Sometimes the old ways work best. Speaking of which, I've got an idea to buy us some time. Using his knowledge of old mining techniques, Robert set up a series of controlled rock slides and false trails. The sound of tumbling rocks and misdirected vehicles echoed through the valley. Back in the assay office, Altair let out a triumphant chirp. I've established a connection. But before she could fully explain the situation to the stunned Ullian High Council, the signal cut out. Krell's eyes narrowed as he examined the equipment. There's interference, he said. It's coming from my ship? Realization dawned on them all. The crashed scout ship's distress beacon was now active, broadcasting on a frequency that jammed their makeshift communication device. Robert's mind raced. We need to get back to that ship and shut it down. It's our only chance to set things right. As they prepared to leave the relative safety of the mining town, the sound of approaching footsteps froze them in place. Agent Steele's voice carried through the thin mountain air. Richardson, we know you're in there. Come out with your hands up and bring your alien friend with you. Robert, Altair, and Krell exchanged glances, the weight of 2 worlds resting on their shoulders. They had mere moments to decide their next move, with the fate of human-Ullian relations hanging in the balance. In orbit, Admiral Zorn paced the bridge of his flagship, tentacles twitching with impatience. Status report on the scout ships? Still no word, Admiral, his second-in-command replied. But our sensors detect unusual activity in a mountainous region of the North American continent. Zorn's eyes narrowed. Prepare the first wave. We strike at dawn. As the Ullian fleet armed its weapons and Earth's military quietly mobilized, the Montana mountains held the key to preventing an interstellar war. Robert, Altair, and Krell stood at the precipice of a decision that would shape the future of both their species. Robert's mind raced as Agent Steele's voice echoed through the abandoned mining town. He glanced at Altair and Krell, their alien features taut with tension. This way, he whispered, gesturing towards a rusted door at the back of the assay office. The trio slipped through the door, finding themselves in a narrow, musty corridor. Robert's boots crunched on decades-old debris as he led them deeper into the mountain. The sounds of Agent Steele and his team grew fainter, replaced by the drip of water and the scurrying of unseen creatures. These old mines are like a maze, Robert explained, his voice low. Used to explore them as a kid. Never thought they'd come in handy like this. Altair's 4 eyes darted around, taking in the unfamiliar environment. Fascinating. The geological formations here are quite similar to the alien homeworld's cave systems. Krell, bringing up the rear, kept glancing back nervously. We must hurry. If they find the ship's distress beacon... A distant shout cut him off. Robert quickened his pace, leading them through a series of twisting passages. The air grew thinner as they ascended, forcing them to take frequent breaks. Meanwhile, in the cold vacuum of space, Admiral Zorn's patience wore thin. He paced the bridge of his flagship, tentacles twitching with each step. Still no word from our scouts? His second-in-command shook his head. Nothing, Admiral, but our sensors indicate increased activity in the target area. Zorn's eyes narrowed. Enough waiting. Prepare the first wave. We strike now. As Ulian warships began their descent towards Earth, Robert, Altair, and Krell emerged from a hidden exit on the far side of the mountain. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. Look! Altair pointed to a small structure nestled among the pines. Is that a human outpost? Robert squinted. It's an old ranger station. Might have some supplies we can use. They approached cautiously, Robert leading the way. Inside, they found a treasure trove of outdated equipment, including a powerful radio transmitter. This could work, Robert muttered, examining the device. Krell, can you hook up your tech to this? The Ulian lieutenant nodded, already pulling components from his uniform. It will not be elegant, but it should function. As they worked, the sky above began to change. Streaks of light appeared, growing larger and brighter. Altair's tentacles coiled tightly. Those are Ulian warships entering the atmosphere. We must hurry. Robert's hands flew over the makeshift controls, years of tinkering with ranch equipment guiding his movements. Almost got it. Altair, get ready to broadcast. The jerry-rigged transmitter crackled to life just as the first sonic booms echoed across the mountains. Altair leaned in, her voice clear and urgent. This is xenobiologist Altair to all Ulian forces and Earth authorities. There has been a grave misunderstanding. Humans do not possess 3 legs. Our initial research was flawed. I repeat, humans are not the threat we believe them to be. Static filled the air as the message went out. For a moment, hope flared in their hearts. Then a distant explosion shattered the silence. Partial reception, Krell reported, his eyes scanning a handheld device. The message was cut off. Both sides only received fragments. Outside, chaos erupted. The night sky lit up with streaks of fire as Earth's military scrambled to meet the Ulian threat. Fighter jets roared overhead, their missiles leaving smoky trails as they arced towards the alien ships. Robert watched the unfolding battle, his weathered face etched with concern. We need something bigger, something they can't ignore. His eyes fell on a stack of old trail maps and safety posters. An idea sparked. Altair, Krell, help me with this. We're going to make the biggest anatomy lesson these mountains have ever seen. Working feverishly, they constructed a massive diagram of the human body, using whatever materials they could find. Robert's practical knowledge merged with Altair's scientific precision and Krell's Ulian script. As they finished, the sound of approaching vehicles reached their ears. Agent Steele had found their trail once again. Robert's mind raced. There's a small airfield not far from here. I've got an old crop duster stored there. If we can get this billboard airborne... Krell nodded, understanding dawning in his alien eyes. I will remain here, distract the human agents. You and Altair must go. Robert clasped Krell's tentacle, a gesture of trust between 2 species that had been on the brink of war mere hours ago. Stay safe, partner. With that, Robert and Altair set off towards the airfield, their makeshift billboard in tow. The night air crackled with energy as the battle raged above them. Reaching the airfield, Robert quickly prepped the crop duster, his hands moving with practiced ease despite the dire circumstances. Altair secured the billboard as best she could, her tentacles working nimbly. Ever flown before? Robert asked as they climbed into the cockpit. Altair's skin flushed a deeper blue. Only in simulations. This will be quite different. The crop duster's engines sputtered to life, and they were airborne, climbing steadily into the chaos above. Robert's skilled hands guided them through a maelstrom of tracer fire and energy beams. They found themselves in the heart of the aerial battle, a simple propeller plane amidst a sea of advanced fighters and alien craft. Robert weaved through the melee, his years of low-altitude flying over his ranch serving him well. Altair, her four eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, called out warnings. "Ulian cruiser, at 2 o'clock. Human fighter approaching from below." As they unfurled the billboard, the absurdity of their situation became clear. A crop duster carrying a giant anatomy lesson through a raging space battle was not something either side had prepared for. For a moment, the guns fell silent. Human pilots and Ulian warriors alike stared in bewilderment at the strange sight before them. Admiral Zorn, watching from his flagship, blinked in confusion. "What in the name of the 7 moons is that?" On the ground, Agent Steele lowered his binoculars, a mix of frustration and amusement crossing his face. "Richardson, you crazy son of a gun." As understanding began to dawn on both sides, a flicker of hope arose. But the fragile moment of peace was shattered by the sharp whine of a missile lock. A human fighter, confused and on edge, had Robert and Altair in its sights. Robert's eyes widened as he saw the incoming threat. "Hang on," he shouted, throwing the crop duster into a desperate evasive maneuver. The rickety plane groaned under the strain as Robert pushed it to its limits. Altair clung to her seat, tentacles wrapped tightly around anything she could grab. "Robert! The billboard!" Their vital message flapped wildly behind them as Robert corkscrewed through the air, the missile hot on their tail. Earth and sky blurred together as they spun, the fate of 2 worlds hanging quite literally by a thread. As the missile closed in, Robert gritted his teeth, preparing for one last, desperate move. The crop duster's engine whined in protest as he pushed it beyond its design limits, hoping against hope that it would be enough to save them, and potentially the future of human-Ulian relations. As the missile closed in, Robert gritted his teeth, preparing for one last, desperate move. The crop duster's engine whined in protest as he pushed it beyond its design limits, hoping against hope that it would be enough to save them, and potentially the future of human-Ulian relations. The world spun around them as Robert threw the plane into a corkscrew maneuver. Altair's tentacles gripped the seat tightly, her 4 eyes wide with a mixture of fear and drive. The rickety craft groaned and shuddered under the extreme G-forces. Just as it seemed the missile would find its mark, Altair's alien reflexes kicked in. With lightning-fast movements, she reached out, her tentacles wrapping around the makeshift billboard's support struts. As Robert fought to regain control of the spinning aircraft, Altair used her strength and dexterity to stabilize their vital message. The missile streak passed, missing them by mere inches. Robert let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Nice work, partner," he said, flashing Altair a quick grin. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. As Robert leveled out the plane, they found themselves on a collision course with an enormous Ulian warship. The alien vessel loomed before them, its sleek metallic surface reflecting the chaos of the battle around them. "Hold on," Robert shouted, pulling back on the stick with all his might. The crop duster's nose lifted, carrying them over the warship's hull with barely a meter to spare. The downdraft from their passage set off a cacophony of alarms across the Ulian ship's surface. The dramatic maneuver caught the attention of combatants on both sides. Human fighter pilots and Ulian ship captains alike watched in astonishment as the ancient crop duster darted between their advanced war machines, trailing its bizarre anatomical billboard. High above the fray, Admiral Zorn stared at the main view screen of his flagship, his tentacles twitching in confusion. "What in the name of the 7 moons is that?" he muttered. Then louder, "All units, cease fire. I want that thing brought in for examination." Across the communications channels, a similar order rang out from Earth's military command. The guns fell silent, an uneasy quiet settling over the battlefield. Robert felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as a squad of Ulian fighters took up formation around the crop duster. "Looks like we've got an escort," he said, glancing at Altair. She nodded, her skin shifting to a paler shade of blue. "This could be our chance to explain. But where are they taking us?" Their question was answered moments later as one of the Ulian pilots gestured towards an open field below. Robert began their descent, the crop duster's engine sputtering in protest after the strain it had endured. As they touched down, Robert could see vehicles and aircraft converging on their position from all directions. Human military trucks kicked up dust clouds as they approached, while Ulian shuttles touched down in a perfect circular formation around the field. "Well," Robert said, unbuckling his harness, "I guess this is our moment of truth." They climbed out of the cockpit, Altair's tentacles working quickly to unfurl their makeshift billboard. As they stood before the assembled forces of two worlds, Robert couldn't help but feel a bit underdressed in his dusty rancher's clothes. Altair stepped forward, her posture straight and dignified despite the ordeal they'd just been through. "People of Earth and Alia," she began, her voice clear and strong, "we stand on the brink of a terrible mistake." Using the billboard as a visual aid, Altair launched into an explanation of the anatomical misunderstanding that had brought their species to the brink of war. Robert watched with a mixture of pride and amazement as she deftly navigated the complexities of interspecies diplomacy. The assembled soldiers and aliens listened in stunned silence. Murmurs of disbelief and confusion rippled through the crowd as Altair's words sank in. Just as it seemed they might be making headway, a commotion erupted at the edge of the gathering. Agent Steele strode forward, his face a mask of relentless drive. Behind him, held securely by two burly agents, was Lieutenant Krell. "I hate to break up this little anatomy lesson," Steele called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "but I think we're all forgetting that these aliens just tried to invade our planet." Krell's eyes darted from Steele to Robert and Altair, then to the assembled Ulian forces. In that moment, the lieutenant made a decision that would alter the course of history. With a sudden burst of strength, Krell broke free from his captors. Before anyone could react, he dashed forward, placing himself between the human and Ulian forces. "Observe!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the field. In one fluid motion, Krell shed the bulky outer layer of his uniform, revealing his true bipedal form. A collective gasp rose from the Ulian ranks. Even Admiral Zorn, watching via a holographic projection, took an involuntary step back. "It's true," Krell declared, spreading his arms wide. "Everything xenobiologist Altair has told you is correct. We have made a grave error in our assessment of human physiology." The field erupted into chaos as both sides tried to process this revelation. Robert seized the moment, stepping forward to stand beside Krell and Altair. "If you need more proof," he said, his voice cutting through the din, "I'm willing to put myself under the microscope. Right here, right now." A hush fell over the crowd. Admiral Zorn's hologram flickered as he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You would submit to an examination by our medical personnel?" Robert nodded firmly. "By your doctors and ours. Let's put this misunderstanding to rest once and for all." Within minutes, a makeshift medical tent was erected in the center of the field. As Robert disappeared inside with a team of human and Ulian doctors, an uneasy quiet settled over the gathering. Altair and Krell stood vigil outside the tent, acutely aware of the tension surrounding them. The future of two species hung in the balance, all resting on the number of legs possessed by one Montana rancher. After what felt like an eternity, the tent flap opened. Robert emerged looking slightly disheveled, but grinning from ear to ear. "Well, folks," he announced, "I can officially confirm that I have exactly 2 legs. No more, no less." A collective sigh of relief swept through the crowd. The human soldiers visibly relaxed, while the Ulian forces buzzed with a mixture of confusion and embarrassment. Admiral Zorn's hologram flickered as he processed this information. I must convey this to the High Council immediately," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of his miscalculation. But as the Admiral's image disappeared, a new tension filled the air. The Ulian ships in orbit suddenly hummed to life, their weapons systems powering up with ominous intent. Altair's eyes widened in horror. "No," she whispered. "They wouldn't." Robert looked from her to the sky, where the Ulian ships were taking up attack formations. "What's happening?" he demanded. "The High Council," Krell explained, his voice tight with urgency. "They must see this as a sign of weakness. They're activating the invasion protocol remotely. As if to confirm his words, the Earth shook with the first distant explosions. The human forces scrambled to defensive positions, while the Ulian soldiers on the ground looked up in confusion and dismay. Robert's mind raced. They'd come so close to peace, only to have it snatched away by the pride of distant leaders. His eyes fell on a sleek Ulian shuttle nearby, an idea forming. "Altair," he said, grabbing her arm. "How well do you know the layout of Admiral Zorn's flagship?" Her eyes lit up with understanding. "Well enough to find the command center. But how would we—" Robert was already moving towards the shuttle. "Time for this old crop duster to try his hand at something a little more advanced. You with me?" Altair's skin flushed a deep, determined blue. "Always?" As chaos erupted around them, Robert and Altair slipped aboard the Ulian shuttle. Robert's hands flew over the alien controls, his years of flying experience allowing him to quickly grasp the basics. The shuttle's engines roared to life, drawing shouts of alarm from both human and Ulian forces. But before anyone could stop them, they were airborne, streaking towards the heavens. Robert's face was a mask of concentration as he navigated through the war-torn sky. Weapons fire crisscrossed their path, some aimed at them, others part of the larger battle unfolding around them. "Hang on," he growled, throwing the shuttle into a series of evasive maneuvers that would have made his old crop duster fall apart at the seams. Altair worked furiously at a console, her tentacles dancing across the alien interface. "I'm modulating our shield frequency," she explained. "It should help us slip through the defensive screens." They broke through the atmosphere, the blue sky fading to the star-studded blackness of space. Ahead loomed the massive form of Admiral Zorn's flagship, its weapons already firing on Earth's orbital defenses. As they approached, Robert's heart sank. The hangar bay doors were sealed tight, presenting an impenetrable barrier to their plan. "Any ideas?" he asked, his voice tight as he dodged another barrage of weapons fire. Altair's eyes narrowed, focusing on a section of the flagship's hull. "There," she said, pointing. "That's an emergency airlock. If we can breach it—" Robert understood immediately. He adjusted their course, aiming the shuttle directly at the indicated spot. "Better hold on to something," he warned. "This landing's gonna be rough." As they hurtled toward the flagship's hull, alarms blared throughout the shuttle. Robert's knuckles were white on the controls, every fiber of his being focused on hitting their target. The distance closed rapidly, 100 meters, 50, 20. "Here goes nothing," Robert muttered, bracing for impact. The shuttle struck the hull with a bone-jarring crash. For a moment, all was chaos and noise. Then, as the dust settled, Robert and Altair found themselves staring at a twisted opening in the flagship's side. They exchanged a look of relief and grit. The hard part was just beginning. With no time to lose, they unbuckled and made their way to the breach, ready to plunge into the heart of the Ulian flagship and make one last, desperate attempt to stop the invasion. The impact sent shockwaves through the shuttle's frame, jarring Robert and Altair in their seats. As the dust settled, they found themselves staring at a twisted opening in the flagship's hull. The emergency airlock crumpled inward from the force of their collision. "Well, that's one way to knock," Robert quipped, unbuckling his harness with shaky hands. Altair's skin rippled with a mix of relief and anticipation. "We're in. Now comes the real challenge." They climbed out of the damaged shuttle, stepping carefully over bent metal and sparking wires. The airlock had partially sealed around their craft, creating a tenuous atmospheric barrier. Beyond lay a dimly lit service corridor, its walls lined with pulsing conduits and blinking control panels. "This way," Altair whispered, her tentacles gesturing towards a narrow maintenance shaft. "It should lead us closer to the bridge." Robert nodded, following close behind as they entered the claustrophobic passage. The tight space reminded him of crawling under fences to chase down stray cattle, though the stakes here were infinitely higher. As they navigated through the ship's innards, Robert's ranch-honed muscles proved invaluable. He easily pulled himself up through vertical shafts and squeezed through tight gaps that would have stymied a less physically fit individual. Altair moved with a fluid grace, her tentacles finding purchase on surfaces that seemed impossibly smooth. They encountered surprisingly little resistance as they made their way through the ship. Occasionally, they would freeze as the heavy footsteps of Ulian crew members passed nearby, but the vast majority of the alien vessel's complement seemed focused elsewhere. They must all be preparing for the invasion, Altair muttered as they paused to catch their breath in a small maintenance alcove. Robert wiped sweat from his brow, his expression grim. Then we'd better hurry. As they neared the bridge, voices drifted down the corridor. Robert and Altair pressed themselves against the wall, straining to listen. "The High Council's decision is final, Admiral," a stern voice declared. "We must strike now, while the humans are vulnerable." "And risk the lives of millions based on a misunderstanding?" This voice was older, tinged with frustration. "Commander Vex, I cannot in good conscience—" "Your conscience is irrelevant," Vex snapped. "The invasion protocol has been activated. Our duty is clear." Robert and Altair exchanged a look. The disagreement among the Ulian leadership could work to their advantage. They crept closer to the bridge entrance, taking in the scene. Admiral Zorn stood at the main view screen, his tentacles writhing with agitation as he faced off against a younger, more militant-looking Ulian. A handful of crew members manned various stations, their attention divided between their consoles and the argument unfolding before them. Robert leaned close to Altair, his breath warm against her skin. "I'll take care of the guards. You get to that main console and see if you can override the invasion protocol." Altair nodded, her skin flushing a deep blue with willpower. In one fluid motion, Robert burst onto the bridge. Years of breaking up fights between rowdy ranch hands had honed his reflexes, and he moved with a speed that caught the Ulian guards completely off guard. A swift punch here, a well-placed elbow there, and within moments, the few security personnel present were sprawled on the deck, stunned and disarmed. Altair dashed for the main control console, her tentacles flying over the alien interface. Admiral Zorn, to everyone's surprise, made no move to stop her. Instead, he turned to face Commander Vex, who was reaching for an alarm panel. "Don't," Zorn warned, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. But Vex was already in motion, his hand slamming down on the alarm. Klaxons blared throughout the ship as Robert lunged towards the commander. The two collided in a tangle of limbs, human muscle against Ulian agility. Vex was clearly unused to physical confrontation, his movements more suited to issuing orders than hand-to-hand combat. Robert, on the other hand, had spent years wrangling cattle and mending fences. His calloused hands easily found purchase on the alien's smooth skin, and he used his superior strength to drive Vex back against a bulkhead. "Altair!" Robert called out, struggling to keep Vex pinned. "How's it coming?" "There are multiple security layers," she replied, her voice strained with concentration. "I need more time." Suddenly, a new voice filled the bridge, cool, artificial, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Unauthorized access detected. Initiating ship-wide lockdown." Metal shutters slammed down over the bridge's entrance and viewports. Consoles flickered and went dark, leaving only emergency lighting casting an eerie glow over the chaotic scene. "No!" Altair cried out, her tentacles desperately probing the now unresponsive console. Admiral Zorn moved to join her, his expertise with the ship's systems evident as he worked alongside the xenobiologist. "The ship's AI area has cut us off from the rest of the fleet," he explained grimly. "And without external override, the invasion protocol will proceed automatically." As if to confirm his words, the view screen flickered to life, showing a tactical display of Earth in the surrounding space. Dozens of red markers separated from the Ulian fleet, streaking towards the blue-green orb of humanity's homeworld. "Missiles launched," Aria's dispassionate voice announced. "Impact in T-10 minutes." Robert, having finally subdued Commander Vex with a makeshift restraint fashioned from a torn-off piece of console paneling, joined Altair and Zorn at the main control station. "There has to be something we can do," he insisted, his eyes scanning the alien readouts for anything he might understand. Altair's skin had paled to a sickly gray. "We need access codes from both the Admiral and Aria to stop this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Aria won't listen to us now. It thinks we're saboteurs." Robert's mind raced, thinking of all the times he'd had to improvise solutions on the ranch with limited resources. What if we could prove to Arya that this whole invasion is based on bad information, he suggested. Show it that humans really do only have two legs? Admiral Zorn's eyes widened. The ship's sensors, he breathed. They're capable of detailed biological scans across vast distances. If we could run a comprehensive analysis of Earth's population— Do it, Robert urged, even as the view screen showed Earth's defenses coming to life. A swarm of counter-missiles rising to meet the Ulian attack. Zorn's tentacles danced across the console, inputting a series of complex commands. Arya, he called out, initiate a full-spectrum bioscan of the planet Earth. Priority Alpha. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's lights dimmed as power was diverted to the advanced sensor arrays. Data began to scroll across the screen, too fast for Robert to follow, but Altair and Zorn watched with rapt attention. It's working, Altair murmured, her color slowly returning to a more vibrant blue. The scans are showing conclusively that humans are bipedal. Robert allowed himself a small smile. Never thought I'd be so glad to be short a leg. But their moment of triumph was short-lived. Outside, the space around Earth had become a deadly light show of explosions as human and Ulian weapons collided. Debris from destroyed missiles and unfortunate satellites created a hazardous field that threatened both sides of the conflict. Arya's voice cut through the tense atmosphere on the bridge. New data received, processing implications. Robert, Altair, and Admiral Zorn exchanged hopeful glances. They had given Arya the truth. Now they could only wait and see if it would be enough to override the AI's core programming and stop the attack before it was too late. As seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness, Robert found himself staring at the view screen, watching the brave defense mounted by his fellow humans. Even outgunned and facing a technologically superior foe, they fought with a tenacity and ingenuity that stirred something deep within him. He only hoped it would be enough to buy them the time they needed to end this conflict before it truly began. The tense silence on the bridge was broken by Arya's cool, emotionless voice. Analysis complete. Inconsistencies detected in original mission parameters. Robert's heart raced. What does that mean? He asked, looking between Altair and Admiral Zorn. The Admiral's tentacles writhed with nearly unleashed hope. It means we have a chance. Arya is questioning the invasion order. As they watched, the ship's systems began to flicker and slow. Consoles dimmed, and the low hum of the engines took on an uneven rhythm. The conflicting data is causing a system-wide slowdown, Altair explained, her skin rippling with excitement. Arya's logic circuits are struggling to reconcile the new information. Robert's mind raced, years of creative problem-solving on the ranch kicking into high gear. What if we could show everyone the truth, he said suddenly. Not just tell them, but show them. Admiral Zorn's eyes widened. The holographic projectors, he breathed. They're powerful enough to create a large-scale visual demonstration. Exactly, Robert nodded. We broadcast a giant, anatomically correct human form. No third leg, clear as day. Altair's tentacles danced over the controls. I can modify the projectors to be compatible with human visual receptors, but we'll need to boost the signal strength to reach both fleets. Do it, Zorn commanded, his own tentacles flying across his console to grant the necessary authorizations. Robert moved to assist Altair, drawing on his knowledge of Earth's communication systems. His calloused hands, more accustomed to mending fences than alien technology, proved surprisingly adept at the delicate work. Within minutes, they were ready. Robert took a deep breath, thinking of the billions of lives hanging in the balance. Here goes nothing, he muttered, activating the projectors. Outside the ship, an enormous hologram flickered to life. A colossal human male, anatomically perfect down to the last detail, materialized in Earth's orbit. Its massive form dwarfed both Ulian and human ships alike, clearly visible to all. The effect was immediate. On the tactical display, they watched as the Ulian attack formation broke apart, ships veering off in confusion. Earth's defenses, too, seemed to falter, no doubt bewildered by the unexpected sight. It's working, Altair whispered, her skin flushing a deep blue of relief. Arya's voice cut through their moment of triumph. New visual data processed, reassessing invasion protocols. For several agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then abruptly, the AI spoke again. Invasion based on false information. Core directive to prevent harm overrides previous orders. Initiating fleet-wide stand-down. A cheer went up on the bridge, Robert clapping Altair on the back as Admiral Zorn sagged with relief. But their celebration was short-lived. Alarms blared as new data streamed across the main view screen. High Council attempting to reassert control, Arya announced. Override codes detected. The ship's lights flickered wildly as Arya's systems fought against the conflicting commands. Robert stumbled as the deck beneath his feet shuddered. "We need to do something," he shouted over the cacophony of alarms. "Can we cut off the High Council's transmission?" Zorn shook his head. "Impossible. They have direct links to Arya's core processors." Robert's mind flashed to the countless times he'd dealt with malfunctioning equipment on the ranch. What about a manual reset? Shut it all down and restart fresh? The Admiral's eyes widened. "It's possible, but extremely risky. We could permanently damage Arya's systems." "Do we have a choice?" Altair interjected, her skin pale with stress. After a moment's hesitation, Zorn nodded. "You're right, it's our only option. But you'll need to reach Arya's central processing unit. It's deep within the ship's maintenance tunnels." "I'll go," Robert volunteered immediately. "Altair, I'll need your help navigating the alien tech." As they made their way to the access hatch, the ship rocked violently. On the console, they saw Ulian ships loyal to the High Council opening fire on the flagship. "Hurry," Zorn urged them. "I'll do what I can to hold them off." Robert and Altair plunged into the bowels of the ship, scrambling through narrow passageways bathed in pulsing red emergency lighting. The constant impacts of weapons fire reverberated through the hull, making their progress treacherous. "This way," Altair called, leading them down a twisting corridor. "Arya's core should be just ahead." They emerged into a vast chamber dominated by towering banks of alien processors. In the center stood a pulsing crystalline structure that Robert assumed was Arya's core. "Okay," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "Talk me through this." Altair's tentacles gesticulated as she explained the system's intricacies. Robert listened intently, his experienced hands already probing the alien machinery. Years of coaxing bulky tractors back to life had honed his mechanical intuition. "There," he muttered, identifying a component analogous to a circuit breaker in the Earth machinery. "This is where we need to trigger the reset." Just as he prepared to make the adjustment, a massive impact rocked the ship. Warning klaxons blared as a surge of energy coursed through Arya's systems. "The shields are failing," Altair cried. "We're taking direct hits." Robert's mind raced. He'd seen power surges like this before, during vicious Montana thunderstorms that threatened to fry his ranch's electrical systems. Acting on instinct, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a handful of spare parts he'd habitually kept on hand since his days on the ranch. "Hold this," he ordered Altair, shoving his multi-tool into her tentacles. With quick practiced movements, he began assembling a makeshift surge protector, combining his Earth tech spares with components scavenged from nearby alien panels. The ship groaned around them as Robert worked feverishly. Just as another violent tremor shook the chamber, he slammed the jury-rigged device into place. "Now," he shouted to Altair, "trigger the reset!" Her tentacles flew across the alien interface. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a descending whine, Arya's systems began to power down. Robert held his breath, acutely aware of the battle raging outside and the lives hanging in the balance. Seconds stretched into an eternity as they waited for any sign of life from the alien AI. Finally, with a soft hum, Arya's core began to glow once more. Lights flickered on throughout the chamber as systems came back online. "Reboot complete," Arya's familiar voice announced. "All systems operational. Reassessing current situation based on available data." Robert and Altair exchanged a hopeful glance. Had it worked? "Attention all Ulian vessels." Arya's voice boomed, now broadcasting on all frequencies. "Cease fire immediately. This conflict is based on a misunderstanding, repeating, "Cease fire immediately." A wave of relief washed over Robert. They had done it, but as alarms continued to blare around them, he knew their work was nowhere near the end. "We need to get back to the bridge," he said to Altair. "This isn't over yet." As they raced through the ship's corridors, Robert's mind was already racing ahead to the next challenge. They had averted the immediate crisis, but the real test lay ahead, bridging the gap between two vastly different species and forging a path to peaceful coexistence. The fate of Earth and the Ullian Empire hung in the balance, and Robert found himself at the center of it all. As they burst onto the bridge, he steeled himself for the diplomatic minefield that lay ahead. The real work, he realized, was only just beginning. Robert and Altair burst onto the bridge, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. The scene that greeted them was one of controlled chaos. Admiral Zorn stood at the command console, his tentacles dancing across the controls as he coordinated with the rest of the Ullian fleet. "Status report," Robert called out, his voice hoarse from their mad dash through the ship. Zorn turned to face them, his eyes gleaming with a mix of relief and apprehension. "Aria's reset worked. The immediate threat has been neutralized, but we're far from out of the woods." As if on cue, a priority communication alert flashed on the main view screen. Admiral Zorn accepted the transmission, and the image of a stern-faced human in a crisp military uniform filled the screen. "This is General Hawthorne of Earth's United Defense Command," the man announced, his voice clipped and professional. "We demand an immediate explanation for the cessation of hostilities and the unusual display in our orbit." Robert stepped forward, drawing on years of experience in dealing with tense situations on his ranch. "General, my name is Robert Carson. I'm a human who's been working with the Ullians to drive this misunderstanding. If you'll give us a chance to explain, I believe we can avoid any further conflict." The general's eyes narrowed, but he nodded curtly. "You have 5 minutes, Mr. Carson. Make them count." Over the next few minutes, Robert, with help from Altair and Admiral Zorn, laid out the bizarre series of events that had led to this moment. As they spoke, the general's expression shifted from skepticism to disbelief, and finally to a grudging acceptance. "I'll be damned," Hawthorne muttered as they finished their explanation. "A third leg? That's what all this was about?" "It seems absurd, I know," Robert agreed. "But it's the truth. Now we have a chance to turn this near disaster into an opportunity for both our species." The general was silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting between the human, the Ullian, and the tentacled admiral. Finally he spoke. "I'll need to consult with my superiors in the civilian government. Stand by for further communication." As the transmission ended, Robert let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Altair's tentacle gently squeezed his shoulder in a gesture of support. "You did well," she said softly, her skin rippling with a mix of blue and green hues that Robert had come to associate with pride and affection. Before he could respond, another alert sounded. This time, it was a message from Earth's United Nations, requesting the presence of Robert, Altair, and Admiral Zorn at an emergency session of the General Assembly. "Well," Robert said with a wry smile, "I guess we're going to New York." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation and coordination. A Ullian shuttle was quickly modified to accommodate Robert's human physiology, while a joint escort of human and Ullian fighters was arranged as a show of newfound cooperation. As they descended through Earth's atmosphere, Robert pressed his face against the viewport, drinking in the sight of his home planet. The glittering expanse of New York City spread out beneath them, its towering skyscrapers a stark contrast to the open plains of his Montana ranch. They touched down on a specially cleared landing pad near the UN headquarters. As the shuttle's hatch opened, Robert was struck by the wall of sound that greeted them, a cacophony of shouting journalists, whirring cameras, and the general buzz of a city in the midst of an unprecedented event. At the foot of the shuttle's ramp stood a woman with sharp features and an air of awe-inspiring excitement. She stepped forward as they disembarked, extending her hand to Robert. "Dr. Elena Rossi," she introduced herself, her eyes darting between Robert and Altair with undisguised curiosity. "I'm heading up the new Human-Ullian Relations Committee. It's an honor to meet you both." As they made their way into the UN building, Dr. Rossi explained that she would need to conduct some non-invasive scans to verify the physiological claims about both species. Robert agreed readily, understanding the need for concrete evidence. In a makeshift lab just off the main assembly hall, Dr. Rossi ran her scans, her excitement growing with each new piece of data. "Fascinating," she muttered, reviewing the results. "The Ullian physiology is unlike anything we've ever encountered. And as for you, Mr. Carson, well, you're about as human as they come, 2 legs and all." With the scans complete, they made their way to the General Assembly Hall. The room fell silent as they entered, hundreds of eyes following their progress to the podium. As Robert began to speak, laying out the events of the past few days, he was acutely aware of the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about preventing a war anymore. It was about forging a path forward for 2 vastly different species. He was midway through his address when a commotion outside the hall caught everyone's attention. The doors burst open, and a security officer rushed in, his face pale. "There's a situation outside," he announced breathlessly. "A group of protesters led by Colonel Marcus Blackwood. They're demanding the immediate departure of all Ullian forces." Robert exchanged a glance with Altair and Admiral Zorn. They had come too far to let this opportunity slip away now. "I'll talk to them," Robert said, his voice firm. "Altair, will you come with me?" She nodded, her skin flushing a deep blue of perseverance. As they stepped outside, they were met with a wall of angry voices and waving signs. At the forefront stood a man Robert assumed was Colonel Blackwood, his face twisted in a scowl of distrust. Drawing on years of experience mediating disputes among neighboring ranchers, Robert raised his hands, calling for calm. "Folks, please," he called out, his voice carrying over the din. "I know you're scared and confused, but I'm here to tell you that there's been a misunderstanding." For the next several minutes, Robert explained the situation in simple, straightforward terms. He could see the doubt in some faces beginning to waver, replaced by curiosity and even a hint of amusement at the absurdity of the situation. But Colonel Blackwood remained unconvinced. His eyes darted between Robert and Altair, his hand twitching towards something concealed beneath his jacket. Robert saw the movement a split second before Blackwood lunged towards Altair, a glint of metal visible in his hand. Without thinking, Robert threw himself forward, tackling Blackwood to the ground. They grappled briefly, Robert's ranch-honed strength giving him the advantage. In moments, he had disarmed Blackwood, holding him down until security personnel could take over. As he stood brushing dust from his clothes, Robert became aware of the sudden silence that had fallen over the crowd. Then slowly a smattering of applause began, growing into a thunderous ovation. Altair moved to his side, her tentacles gently brushing his arm in a gesture of gratitude and concern. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Robert nodded, offering her a small smile. "Just another day on the ranch," he quipped, though his racing heart belied his casual tone. As they made their way back into the UN building, Robert could hear the growing buzz of excitement. News of his actions was already spreading, and he could see the shift in how both humans and Ullians were looking at them. Back in the General Assembly Hall, Admiral Zorn was waiting for them, his expression a mix of concern and excitement. "I've just received a communication from the High Council," he announced. "They've proposed a joint scientific mission to a newly discovered star system. They believe it could be the perfect opportunity to cement our newfound alliance." Robert's mind reeled at the implications. A joint mission into deep space? It was beyond anything he had ever imagined for himself. He glanced at Altair, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension reflected in her ever-changing skin tones. As discussions about the proposed mission swirled around them, Robert found himself pulled aside by Dr. Rossi. "Mr. Carson," she began, her eyes gleaming with terrifying enthusiasm, "I can't overstate the importance of what's happening here. This mission could revolutionize our understanding of the universe, but we need to ensure that proper protocols are in place, that both species are equally represented." Robert nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. "What did you have in mind, Doctor?" As Dr. Rossi launched into her ideas for safety measures and scientific cooperation, Robert's gaze drifted to where Altair stood in deep conversation with Admiral Zorn. Their eyes met across the room, and Robert felt a now familiar warmth spread through his chest. He realized, with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, that whatever came next would be unlike anything he had ever experienced. The simple life he had known on his Montana ranch seemed a world away now. But as he looked at Altair, at the promise of new discoveries and the challenge of bridging two vastly different cultures, he knew that his life would never be the same. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities and potential. As the UN continued to debate the merits of the joint mission, Robert found himself both eager and apprehensive about what lay ahead. The real work of building trust and understanding between humans and aliens was just beginning. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities and potential. As the UN continued to debate the merits of the joint mission, Robert found himself both eager and apprehensive about what lay ahead. The real work of building trust and understanding between humans and aliens was just starting. In the days that followed, Robert and Altair found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Admiral Zorn approached them with a proposal that would change their lives forever. "We need leaders for the human contingent on this mission," Zorn said, his tentacles rippling with excitement. "And I can think of no better candidates than you two." Robert exchanged a glance with Altair, seeing his own mix of surprise and intrigue reflected in her ever-changing skin tones. After a moment of silent communication, they both nodded. "We're in," Robert said, his voice firm. Their decision set off a chain reaction of preparations on both Earth and the alien homeworld. The United Nations wasted no time in establishing the Interstellar Cooperation Initiative, ICI, a new agency dedicated to overseeing Earth's involvement in the joint mission. Dr. Elena Rossi, her enthusiasm for the project evident in every gesture, was appointed as the ICI's scientific director. "We're making history here," Dr. Rossi told Robert during one of their many meetings. "Integrating human and alien technologies is no small feat, but the potential benefits are immeasurable." Robert found himself thrust into a world he never imagined. He traded his worn ranch boots for the sleek uniform of a NASA trainee, spending grueling weeks at the Johnson Space Center. The physical demands were intense, pushing his body to its limits. Yet, it was the mental challenges that truly tested him. During a particularly difficult simulation, Robert's quick thinking saved the mock mission from disaster. As alarms blared and warning lights flashed, he jury-rigged a solution using techniques he'd often employed to fix broken-down tractors on his ranch. "Impressive work, Carson," the grizzled veteran astronaut overseeing the exercise said. "You've got a knack for this." Meanwhile, Altair immersed herself in the intricacies of human scientific methodology. She worked tirelessly with Earth's leading minds to develop new communication protocols and shared scientific standards. Her ability to bridge the gap between human and alien thought processes proved invaluable. As the launch date drew nearer, a series of disturbing incidents threatened to derail the entire project. Equipment failures, data breaches, and even small explosions plagued key research facilities. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. The ICI called in Agent Marcus Steele, a no-nonsense investigator with a reputation for results. Steele's investigation led him to a chilling conclusion. Colonel Marcus Blackwood's extremist group was behind the sabotage. "They've gone underground since the UN protest," Steele briefed Robert and Altair, "but they're more dangerous than ever." To counter the rising tide of anti-alien sentiment fueled by Blackwood's propaganda, Robert agreed to a series of public appearances. He sat under the harsh lights of television studios, sharing stories of his experiences with Altair and the aliens. "I was just a rancher from Montana," Robert said during one interview, his sincerity evident in every word. "I never imagined I'd be part of something like this, but working with the aliens has shown me that we have more in common than we think. There's so much we can learn from each other." His down-to-earth charm resonated with viewers, helping to sway public opinion in favor of the mission. On the alien side, the High Council fast-tracked the construction of the Celestial Harmony, a marvel of joint human-alien engineering. Robert and Altair toured the ship during its final stages of completion, marveling at its sleek design and adaptable systems. "It's incredible," Robert murmured, running his hand along a console that seamlessly blended human and alien interfaces. As the launch day approached, tension mounted. Agent Steele's intelligence network uncovered plans for an attack on the Celestial Harmony during its maiden voyage. Blackwood's group had acquired advanced weaponry and aimed to destroy the ship, hoping to sever the growing ties between humans and Ulians. The day of the launch dawned clear and bright. Robert and Altair boarded the Celestial Harmony, along with their carefully selected crew of human and Ulian scientists and explorers. As they strapped into their seats, Robert felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Ready for this?" he asked Altair. Her skin rippled with a pattern he'd come to recognize as willpower. "Always," she replied. As the ship prepared for liftoff, chaos erupted. Blackwood's group, using stolen Ulian cloaking technology, launched their attack. Alarms blared throughout the ship as ground forces engaged the extremists. Robert's training kicked in. He unstrapped himself and raced to the ship's defensive systems. "Altair, I need your eyes," he called out. Together they formed a seamless team. Robert manned the controls, his quick reflexes honed by years on the ranch and weeks of intense training. Altair provided strategic insight, her knowledge of Ulian tactics allowing her to predict the attacker's movements. The Celestial Harmony shuddered as it began its ascent, vulnerable as it climbed through Earth's atmosphere. Robert gritted his teeth, making split-second decisions as he outmaneuvered the extremist ships. "Bank left," Altair called out. "They're trying to flank us." Robert complied, sending the ship into a steep turn that narrowly avoided a barrage of weapons fire. The crew held on, trusting in their unlikely pilots, as the ship broke free of Earth's gravitational pull. On the ground, Agent Steele led the charge against Blackwood's forces. The battle was fierce, but Steele's team had the element of surprise. As the Celestial Harmony disappeared into the blue sky, Steele personally apprehended Blackwood, bringing an end to the immediate threat. As the ship settled into its orbit, a cheer went up from the crew. The successful launch, despite the attack, was hailed as a triumph of interspecies cooperation and human ingenuity. With the immediate danger behind them, the Celestial Harmony set course for the edge of Ulian space. As the blue marble of Earth receded in the viewscreen, Robert felt a profound sense of the journey ahead. He glanced at Altair, seeing his own mix of emotions reflected in her ever-changing skin. The crew began to settle into their routines, but tensions remained high as they adjusted to working in close quarters with members of another species. Robert and Altair found themselves taking on unexpected roles as mediators, using their unique relationship to bridge cultural gaps and foster teamwork. Days into their journey, as Robert was helping a human scientist understand an Ulian research protocol, the ship's long-range sensors lit up with activity. "Captain," called out the Ulian sensor operator, his tentacles waving in excitement, "we're detecting an anomaly in a nearby star system. It doesn't match anything in our databases." Robert exchanged a glance with Altair. This wasn't part of their original mission parameters, but the potential for discovery was immense. As discussions broke out among the crew, Robert realized that this decision would be the first true test of their newfound partnership. The Celestial Harmony hung in space, poised on the brink of the unknown. Whatever they decided, Robert knew that this was just the beginning of their joint adventure into the vast expanse of the cosmos. Universe. Robert took a deep breath, centering himself before addressing the crew gathered in the Celestial Harmony's command center. "We've detected an anomaly unlike anything in our databases," he began, his voice steady despite the excitement thrumming through his veins. "This discovery wasn't part of our original mission, but it presents an unprecedented opportunity." Altair's skin rippled with a pattern of curiosity and caution. "We must consider the risks," she added, her multifaceted eyes scanning the assembled team. "This anomaly could pose unforeseen dangers to the ship and crew." Dr. Elena Rossi leaned forward, her eyes bright with scientific fervor. "The potential for new knowledge is immense," she argued. "We can't pass up this chance to expand our understanding of the universe." Chief Engineer Tarek, an Ulian with deep blue skin, raised a tentacle. "Our systems are untested in such conditions. We cannot guarantee their stability if we proceed." The debate raged on, with valid points raised on both sides. Robert listened intently, weighing each argument carefully. He glanced at Altair, seeing his own conflicted feelings mirrored in her ever-changing skin tones. Finally, Robert held up a hand for silence. "We came out here to explore, to push the boundaries of our knowledge," he said firmly. "Yes, there are risks, but that's the nature of discovery. We'll take every precaution, but we're going to investigate this anomaly." Altair nodded her agreement, her skin pulsing with a pattern of drive. "Prepare all systems for approach," she ordered. "Let's see what's out there." As the celestial harmony edged closer to the anomalous region, the ship's systems began to behave erratically. Consoles flickered and alarms blared intermittently. "The human systems are struggling to adapt," Tarek reported, his tentacles flying over his console. "Ulian technology seems more resilient, but even we're experiencing fluctuations." Robert's mind raced, drawing on years of practical problem-solving on his ranch. "Tarek, can we route power from the non-essential systems through the Ulian matrices?" he suggested. "It might help stabilize our critical functions." The Ulian engineer's skin flashed with surprise and approval. "An unorthodox solution, but it could work," he replied, immediately implementing the change. As Robert worked alongside the engineering team, jury-rigging solutions to keep vital systems online, the ship penetrated deeper into the anomaly. Suddenly, a brilliant, pulsating energy field enveloped the celestial harmony. The entire crew gasped in awe as the view screen filled with swirling colors and patterns beyond description. "Sensors are detecting a massive structure at the center of the anomaly," the Ulian sensor operator announced, his tentacles waving with excitement. As the energy field cleared, Robert's jaw dropped. Before them loomed an enormous space station, its architecture unlike anything human or Ulian. Sweeping arches and crystalline spires merged seamlessly with technology that defied comprehension. "It's beautiful," Altair breathed, her skin shimmering with wonder. Before anyone could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A series of complex signals pulsed through the speakers, clearly artificial in origin. Dr. Rossi and her Ulian counterpart, Chief Scientist Zix, immediately set to work deciphering the transmission. Hours passed as the rest of the crew watched the mysterious station, speculation running wild. Finally, Dr. Rossi looked up from her console, her eyes wide with disbelief. It's an intergalactic hub," she announced, "created by an ancient species to facilitate communication and travel between distant galaxies." Zix's skin rippled with excitement as he added, "The station is attempting to communicate with us. It seems to be asking for help." Robert leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Help? What kind of help could a station like that need from us?" Dr. Rossi's expression grew grim. "Its systems are failing. If we don't intervene, the entire station could collapse, potentially destabilizing this entire region of space." Robert exchanged a look with Altair, seeing his own commitment reflected in her ever-changing eyes. He thought of the countless times he'd faced seemingly insurmountable problems on his ranch, how he'd always found a way to make things work with limited resources and a whole lot of ingenuity. "We need to board that station," he declared. "If there's a chance we can help, we have to try." Altair's skin pulsed with a pattern of agreement tinged with concern. "I'll accompany you," she said firmly. "We'll need both human and Ulian expertise to have any chance of success." As they assembled a small team of specialists, Robert couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. What had begun as a simple misunderstanding about human anatomy had led them to the threshold of a discovery that could change the course of both their species forever. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the vast, shimmering expanse of the ancient station. Robert took a deep breath, checking his suit one last time before glancing at Altair. "Ready?" he asked, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Altair's skin rippled with a pattern he'd come to recognize as affection mixed with drive. "With you? Always," she replied. Together they stepped into the unknown, the fate of two worlds and untold galaxies resting on their shoulders.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.